In a world of constant breaking news, this is your backstage pass to the political heart of Europe. Hello and welcome to a new episode of EU Decoded, the podcast by the EPP Group in the European Parliament. So this week, we are taking you through the most pressing topics from the plenary session in Strasbourg. From Europe's new defence industry programme to strengthening online protection for children to stopping illegal and dangerous Chinese products from flooding the EU market. But before we dive into all that, and in light of recent developments, we begin with the issue that remains at the centre of Europe's security agenda, Ukraine. Amid growing discussions about a possible peace plan between Ukraine and Russia, the EPP Group insists that Europe and Ukraine must defend their shared interests, stand firm and not give in to Moscow's pressure. The EU's focus must remain on securing an immediate ceasefire and just peace for Ukraine. As MEP Nicolas Pasquale de la Parte explains, understanding what a fair peace truly means requires understanding why Putin launched this war in the first place.
He didn't march into Ukraine in order to occupy the Donbass. He only had the control of this through the terrorists and the militias. He marched into Ukraine in February 22 in order to topple the regime and to put a puppet president in Ukraine. This is the objective of Putin. That no matter what kind of concessions, list of land concessions to Putin, he will not change his calculation. He will continue the war the day after the agreement through hybrid threats and through massive information activities.
The only way to change Putin's calculation, he says, is to make it clear that he cannot win this war by supporting Ukraine and increasing pressure on Russia through tougher sanctions, including secondary sanctions, on those who continue doing business with Moscow. Manfred Weber, chairman of the EPP Group, highlighted the red line. There can be no concessions on Ukraine's territory.
No, a war criminal cannot be awarded for this terror. So accepting any kind of amnesty for Russian war criminals is unacceptable.
The European Parliament has reaffirmed its commitment to supporting Ukraine and to pursuing a peace that does not come at the expense of Europe's own security.
Deterring Russia from further aggression beyond Ukraine and protecting our citizens requires us to take a more common, a more European approach to defence.
As MEP Michael Gahler called for, Europe must deepen its cooperation in the defence sector to strengthen both its industrial base and its strategic capabilities. And this week brought a breakthrough. The Parliament gave its final approval to the European Defence Industry Programme. This long-term initiative is designed to ensure that European countries invest in European military equipment.
Nous ne voulons pas la guerre, nous voulons protéger la paix. Mais la seule manière de protéger la paix, c'est d'appliquer ce conseil qui vient.
We do not want war, we want to protect peace. But the only way to protect peace is to prepare for war, said MEP François Bellamy. He explains that after decades of dangerous dependencies that have threatened the sovereignty of the EU's democracies, this programme will strengthen the EU's industrial base and ensure that the armed forces have the means to fulfil their mission. However, MEP Michael Gahler regrets that a budget of €1.5 billion still leaves a substantial gap between EDIP's ambition and the resources allocated, and he calls for swift action to bridge it.
This is now not the time to think, well, on the national level, now there is so much money available, let's look inward. No, the opposite is necessary. Let us make use of the potential that we have here. Let's join forces, let's make use of economies of scale and more interoperability to get the things right that we need to do now.
Meanwhile, in the Far East, China is imposing export restrictions on rare earth elements, a move that exposes Europe's dangerous strategic dependencies and at the same time weaponizes trade. The EPP Group is calling for a firm rules-based dialogue with China to defend Europe's interests and ensure Beijing respects its WTO commitments.
Necesitamos extender nuestra red de proveedores de materias primas críticas en Iberoamérica y África.
MEP Juan Ignacio Zoido Alvarez calls for diversifying Europe's suppliers of critical raw materials, especially in Latin America and Africa, and for deepening partnerships with countries such as Japan, Canada and Australia. The goal is simple: cut risky dependencies, so Europe can act and compete freely.
China now controls around 60% of global production and 90% of refining capacity for key materials. Its growing use of export controls is a stark reminder that trade can be weaponized and that our dependence on malign actors leaves us vulnerable. This is why the EU must invest in its own strategic capabilities.
MEP Juliana Zovko stresses the need for Europe to de-risk from China and to build resilient strategic alliances across the Indo-Pacific, Asia and Latin America. Working hand in hand with transatlantic partners, she says Europe must push back against the unfair trade practices that are hurting its businesses, industries and workers. And on the topic of China, the European Parliament passed a key vote this week on consumer protection. Platforms like Shein, Temu and AliExpress, known for selling low-cost goods, have come under scrutiny for carrying products with far higher real-world costs. Reports have found childlike sex dolls, weapons and other illegal items being sold. And while the European market must remain open, it cannot be lawless. Illegal and harmful products, especially those that exploit or endanger children, must be permanently removed from online marketplaces. But today, children face many other risks too, especially online.
The internet has so many benefits, but it was not designed with children in mind. Yet 97% of children over the age of 3 in Europe are online and are exposed to risks. Our report targets harmful commercial practices designed to keep children hooked to their services.
MEP Dora David points to a report proposing measures to significantly strengthen online child protection. The goal is clear: to ensure Europe's children grow up in a digital world that supports, not harms, their development. And achieving this will require several concrete steps.
So we call to ban profiling-based recommender systems for minors, gambling-like features in video games like loot boxes, and incentives for kidfluencing that pressure children to constantly create content for likes and views. But protecting children is about more than bans. We must balance their rights with their safety, which is why we call for an age limit of 16 under which youngsters can access social media, video sharing platforms and AI companions, but subject to parental consent.
The idea isn't to exclude, it's about empowerment and education, helping children and parents navigate the digital world safely.
Dass junge Menschen heutzutage bis zu 4 Stunden online verbringen und damit sind sie Risiken aus.
With the amount of time that children spend online today, they are exposed to risks that are too much to handle for many of them, says MEP Andreas Schwab. He points to examples from certain member states which, unfortunately, he notes, show that stronger state oversight can help reduce risks when it comes to harmful content targeting minors.
Und was wir wollen, ist in Europa, dass alle jungen Menschen den gleichen Schutz vor gefährlichen Inhalten bekommen. Und gefährlicher Inhalt ist nicht ein Witz.
And before we wrap up, we return to a deeply concerning issue: the persecution and discrimination of Christian minorities around the world. Just days ago, more than 200 students were kidnapped from a Catholic school in Nigeria, a stark reminder of the alarming situation Christians face there. Since 2009, over 50,000 have been brutally killed, says MEP Juliana Zovko.
More than 38 million Christians suffer a high level of persecution and discrimination.